Out of everything that I've watched so far of Ray Donovan, this has got to be the one that delves really deep into the current situation we're at with the series. And we're just 4 episodes in on Ray Donovan. That's a scary thought for you. For now, let's talk about the new episode of Ray Donovan, which this week is entitled Solid. Yeah. So the episode starts off with 2 anonymous characters as they go into a sub shop and they decide to hold the place up and of course steal all the staff and the customers and steal all their money and PIN numbers for the bank next door so they could get away with hundreds and thousands of dollars. Yeah. So later on, Mick tries to talk to Marty about trying to get him to accept the script that he wrote. Unfortunately, it doesn't go over so very well, which leaves literally Mickey Donovan to slap the guy senseless. At least not majorly, just minor slaps. It's weird, but it's funny just to see Mick just slap and not beat anybody. It ain't like that. So of course, in the long run, Brendan decides to go for the gold and hit up the business. Actually, the more I think about it, I was going Bunchy earlier, but now I'm just suddenly going with Brennan. I guess for the whole time this was happening, they never called him Bunchy. They called him Brennan throughout this episode. But of course he goes for the gold and decides that he's going to get into the business and try to make double or quadruple of what he barely even gets as he goes into his home and basically puts around $1.5 million into a little bag. And to be more precise, his little infant carry bag. Which I find very interesting that they'd hide money in such a little bag like that. So Ray winds up packing Abby's clothes as he starts to imagine Abby talking about the business now that they have the bar. But of course this is like months or weeks leading up to where Abby will wind up passing away. So it's interesting that while they had chemistry and they actually worked off of each other in the second episode as we saw through that flashback, it's literally where Abby starts to lose it. And I'll explain that later on. So of course what winds up happening is So Terry winds up showing a character that we met in season 4, and I forget his name, but a young guy as he's basically being shown off a match that aired on Showtime, because it's a Showtime show, so they're allowed to make relations for CBS related stuff, and even their own network. But of course this situation happens, especially with the kid's father, who just recently moved into LA and now he has to find a way to make it up to Terry. I guess we'll see what happens next time. Sorry, it's just I've been a bit slow because of, like, recent times and having to edit the con vlogs. It really gets to you. Daryl winds up finding Jay's Japanese trainer or friend or whatever it is. And he winds up finding his Japanese friend dead via head chop. As, of course, both Mickey and Daryl have to wind up taking care of the situation and have to, like, try to get rid of the body. Which they wind up doing so by cutting the body into a bunch of pieces, but also, surprisingly enough, putting them in the back and doing what Ray does and try to conceal the body somewhere. And obviously dumping the body Dexter style and throwing it in the lake. Odd that they would make some sort of reference or whatever to Dexter, where they just, place the remains of the body into the lake. But the way they have the body pieces cut, it's kind of like the Ice Truck Killer, which is the first season villain in that series. If you ever do want to watch Dexter, I highly recommend it, but if you're not willing to go beyond season 4, then just stick with the first 4 seasons. At least the 4th season has John Lithgow in it. And John Lithgow is always a plus. So Brendan winds up dropping by the sub shop, which is next door to the said bank, that he's going to get his cashier's check in. But unfortunately, as he heads into the sub shop, he winds up getting robbed by the two who took over the place and winds up stealing his $1.5 million filled duffel bag. And, of course, knocking him out cold. Which means it's going to be a long while till we figure out who those two were. And have to figure out how is he going to wind up getting the money back? Or is he screwed? Ray winds up fixing the wall in his home, as he winds up, of course, flashing back once again to his wife coming back from a quick trip through somewhere, as she winds up basically destroying parts of the bar with the baseball bat, smashing up a couple of glasses and even smashing into a wall, which sort of kind of symbolizes that hole in the wall, the more I think about it. Because Abby winds up smashing a hole in the wall in the bar, and it's kind of a representation of the square hole inside the home. But it was also when Abs winded up thinking that there were animals inside that wall. Just crazy thinking, crazy assumptions, Bridget winds up telling her friend about what Ray does for a living. He's a fixer, he can hide bodies, he's all this great stuff, but he's also a person who commits a lot of crimes. And she winds up telling him about the situation with his health, as he leaves completely like he's about to throw up, and like he doesn't believe her. What winds up happening in the meanwhile, and we barely even see much of Bridget in that episode, but it might continue onwards, forwards. Who knows? Jay and the group wind up heading out to the docks to dump out the body. There are police there, but thankfully they don't take a look at the back of the trunk. The police officer instead winds up taking a photo, And especially seeing as how he's a fan of Jay and his career and roles and all that. And like I said earlier, they drop the sensei's body in there via Dexter style. Yeah. Of course, Brendan. So moving forwards, Jay winds up receiving a script from Mickey Donovan for his movie, which again was turned down by Marty. But he has Jay take a look at the script and have him think about it for a while, as Mick winds up driving off with his sensei's car. Again, has to hide the evidence so that they don't, find a thing about it. So Mick winds up going back onto the bar, and he winds up finding himself in a bit of a tight spot where somebody from the FBI forces his hands behind him about the little string of murder that he winded up committing during Season 4, that being of his girlfriend dying and him having to murder a bunch of people that killed his wife, or girlfriend, I mean. And so he's in a bit of a tight pickle, which could be the turning point that Mick has to go and commit a crime. And it might happen in the next episode. And the final piece of the episode that it ends on is that Ray's home winds up getting bought by a family, as Ray just winds up accepting his home being bought and having to move away from it so he doesn't have to take a look at it or just be reminded of how his life was inside that home. So he winds up driving away from it, as Fly Like an Eagle, not the one used by the Steve Miller Band, winds up getting played in the background. And that was... yeah, I got videos running here. Piece of junk. And that was solid. So... Solid delved very deeply through a lot of situations that'll happen. Nothing of major has happened, at least minorly, in this episode, except the turning point is definitely Brendan getting screwed out of his $1.5 million to invest in the business that we saw last week. But then we also see that Ray is now moving out of his home that we've seen from the past 4 seasons. Which winds up leading to the fact, is he going to stay in an apartment that he had in Season 2? Where is he going to move next? I mean, he doesn't have his son or his daughter to go to, since they both move their own ways, as we've seen earlier on in the season. But also to the fact, will Jay wind up accepting Mickey's script to try and get the project rolling? What will happen to Mickey, especially after the incidents of Season 4? We'll have to find out on the next episode of Ray Donovan in 2 weeks. Yeah, we're waiting 2 weeks for episode 5 of Ray Donovan. And the wait is not going to be easy. I mean, we're going to wind up having to wait until September 10th or something for the next episode of Ray Donovan and see where that goes. I mean, normally the season ends in September or somewhere around October, but this is the first time that they're ever getting Ray Donovan expanding a bit further into the fall. For all we know, it could wind up ending in October or November, for all we know. It's left hanging on what will happen in the next episode. We'll never know. But I still got the MLP stuff to review, and hopefully sometime I might be able to get around to seeing a couple of movies I've not watched yet that have been out in theaters but are starting to get released onto home video and digital and TV provider pay-per-view. So hopefully I might get around to reviewing something. So with that in mind, I will see you guys in 2 weeks for the all-new episode of Ray Donovan, but also for movie reviews as well as the all-new My Little Pony episodes. So, with that in mind, I shall see you guys in the upcoming weeks for the all-new videos, but also see you guys in 2 weeks for episode 5 of Ray Donovan. Toodaloo.